Okay, so doing a video a day is going to be interesting. I'm probably just going to start doing ones on my phone, easy. But to fill out the week, I want to talk about a book that I read that I really like called The Fourth Turning. Now, the funny thing about this book is there are people on the right that have been talking about this for a long time, even weirdos like Steve Bannon and some other people. Like, this has been a book that has been around for some time, and it has been on a lot of different people's radar. I think where I might have seen it talked about first was on a video by Van Neistat, which is, I believe, Casey Neistat's brother, maybe? I don't know. He does a really good breakdown. I would definitely recommend searching for that, Van Neistat, Fourth Turning. He does a really good breakdown on a whiteboard about the different generations. I want to do kind of a quick overview and why I think it's worth reading. So the premise to the book is that there are seasons to every, I guess, empire. I don't know if that's the right term, like you could use it for country, but in this book, it's written more directly about this country, but you could draw parallels to others. And he basically lays out that there's seasons, just like any other, just like a growth cycle of a person. In the spring, you have times are easy, and that is like, for example, coming out of World War II. Times were easy because all the women went back to the kitchen, all the men got jobs, everybody made enough to buy a house. And again, wasn't good for everybody. I'm just saying financially, the country as a whole financially was doing well. And then you get to the summer where, you know, you stretch your legs a little bit, you start to get a little comfortable. The fall where, oh, I don't know, things aren't as good as they used to be, but you know, things are still okay. And then these are all called turnings, the first, second, third. And then the fourth is winter, which is, this is when the wheels fall off and everything kind of goes to hell for a while. The reason this book really caught my interest is because when he breaks it down, there are parallels to basically different time periods. And it's not exact because nothing's exact, but it's about a generation, which is like about how long a person lives, which is 80 years. And then each is broken down to generations. Each generation has kind of a different personality. And I find some of that like a little bit horoscopy. Obviously, that's not going to apply to everybody exactly. But I do find it interesting enough. And especially when you break down other fourth turnings, they took place, this one takes place obviously now, and they lay it out very clearly. They say there's going to be things like economic upheaval, pandemic is very common, and then a war fought to completion, which is a horrible thought. And eventually it collapses enough to where you pick up the pieces and you start over and you begin a new growth cycle. And the other fourth turnings are, you know, World War II, the Civil War, the Revolutionary War. This all is directly applicable in this country. And I find it really fascinating because it does kind of seem like it plays out fairly well, because you have a horrible war and then you have the people that follow that work, you know, things work really well for a while after because you're growing out from that horrific thing. And then after a while, people start to forget, and they forget about how bad that war was, and eventually it comes around again and smacks you in the face. And one of the things that was really interesting is it was written, I believe, in the 90s, and they did talk about a pandemic happening. And so I read it, I think, right before that. So maybe it wasn't that video, I don't know, but that video is a very good breakdown, as a good reminder. But if you want a very specific generation by generation breakdown, he does a very good job in that. This idea, though, I think one of the things I push back is there are larger cycles at play. And in this country, there may be yearly cycle that happens, or a cycle that happens roughly every 80 years or so. But I think those cycles are in a greater cycle of expanding as an empire. And I think there's going to be a larger fall at some point based on no longer being the world reserve currency. And so it's not just about, oh, well, we have to make it to 2030 and then everything just flips and starts over. I think it's more complicated than that, but it is somewhat hopeful in that the way they put it is, yes, you're going to have at some point a war that is going to be fought, and they say it to completion. So not like a police action like Vietnam or Korea, like a full-on, for real, somebody's really got to lose war. And that's a little horrifying in a day and age of everybody has very incredibly powerful weapons that could literally just flatten everything. But it is hopeful in that if you get through that, there will be a spring and there will be a time of rebuilding, and then we'll, forget the whole song and dance and do the whole thing again. That is kind of horrifying, but also in some ways it makes you feel a little better, because it may mean that we can dig out of this and start over. The question is, like, how many times do you have to do the same exact thing before you think maybe avoid some of that, maybe build a situation where a society where it's oriented towards people being more satisfied and having more of a purpose and not feeling the way they do, which leads to all of the things that are going to happen, and or allowing billionaires to become tiny little black holes of money that suck up all the wealth in your country. I don't know, but I would highly recommend the book because I feel like it was very prophetic in some ways. And if it's to be believed, we have another 4 years before we can start to hope to dig out of this, but we also have a major war to look forward to. And again, I don't know, having only like three previous cycles to go by, it's putting a lot of weight into all of that lining up. I think there is something to be said for, there are other cycles at play, and there are other forces now kind of pushing back. Like in all of those cycles, we hadn't yet really started to emit huge quantities of CO2, which is very much affecting both the ocean and how the atmosphere deals with heat. I think we're going to struggle with a lot of things as a world. But again, I recommend that video. I definitely recommend reading the book, or in my case, I think I did it on audiobook. It is very interesting, and it does break down generations in a way that seems to map pretty well. Like, I don't remember a lot of people in, was it the boomers, and then the greatest generation, and then the silent generation before that. But it does map pretty well, and it seems like it maps pretty well to the stuff that's coming. Don't know if it accounts for all of it, but I found it very fascinating. I would highly recommend reading it. And that's all I have for today. I hope to see you tomorrow. I don't know what I'm going to be doing for videos because I haven't quite gotten into the collapse thing as a whole, because I want to map out all the episodes I want to do. But I will be keep doing this every day. I think I'm going to probably do it every day for a month, and then maybe go to once a week, or find small daily things and then do larger topics. I don't know. But either way, for now, I will see you tomorrow.